Your car deserves the best. That's why my Pontiac GTO and Porsche Boxster S are wrapped in California car covers. Since 1989, they've been family owned and focused on quality, offering more than 100,000 patterns plus fully custom options. Protect your passion with California Car Cover, the world's softest custom fit covers. Learn more at calcarcover.com. Imagine a journey so rare it only happened once. That's the spirit behind Once. Exclusive, one time only adventures that will never be repeated. Our next experience, American Muscle Legends, takes you trackside with the most iconic cars in history, complemented by luxury accommodations and behind the scenes access you simply can't buy. Spots are limited. When it's gone, it's gone. You can learn more at discoveronce.com/muscle. RM Sotheby's is the world's largest collector car auction house by total sales. They are the preeminent market maker of high-quality collector cars and collections, regardless of size or complexity. By working in partnership with the Sotheby's team and its network of 80 offices in 40 countries, RM Sotheby's has established the largest client network of any collector car auction house in the world. Join the RM Sotheby's family by connecting with one of their car specialists at rmsotheby's.com or contact me directly at gstanley@rmsotheby's.com. Yeah. All right. Welcome to the Collector Car Podcast. I'm excited about today's episode because I've had a lot of questions about folks asking how can they become maybe a car specialist, but just a career in the car world. So go back a couple weeks. You can listen to Gord Duff, the president of RM Sotheby's, as well as Jacob Gorman in the Hershey Falls special if you want to learn a little bit more. The second most common question I probably get, other than what's my dream car, is how do you become a judge? And so for this episode, I'd like to welcome David Eichenbaum. How you doing, buddy?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me, Greg. I'm happy to be here. I love talking about cars and the car hobby, and it's a privilege to be on this podcast with you. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Now, we got to know each other a little bit through judging Ferraris, and I know that you also judge at Pebble Beach. So before we get to the actual judging aspect, tell us a little bit about your history with or your passion for cars. Is there anything cool in your garage? Just an overview of where this passion for cars comes from.
Sure. Um, I'm David Eichenbaum. I'm not a professional car person. I'm a car hobbyist, and we can talk about that as far as how that works into judging. I've been around cars my whole life. People ask me commonly what got me into cars, and the answer is I truly don't know because I don't remember the day that I got into cars. I've always loved them since, like many of the folks who are involved in the car hobby, they've loved them for as long as they can remember, since they were probably babies.
Yeah.
My first memories are playing with toy cars. My father liked cars. My father is passed in 2009, but he liked cars. He was a kid who grew up in the Bronx and didn't have a car, and they were always aspirational objects, I think, for him. And he was a successful solo internal medicine doctor and eventually had kind of at least one fun car at a time. And when I was a kid, he made his first big car purchase, which was a 1975 Mercedes R107 450 SL, probably the most anemic and least desirable of all the SLs ever produced. And he used to take me out for drives in it. I was born in 1976, so I was 4 years old or so when he purchased that as a used car. And he used to take me for drives in it and tell me that if I worked hard and kept at it, I could someday have a sports car like that you can feel the road in. And of course, you can't feel the road in a 1975 R107 SL, but probably you can more so than an Oldsmobile Cutlass, which was our other car at the time. And I took that to heart, and I love that car, and I still have that car all these years
Wow.
later. It's probably my most favorite of all the cars that I've got because it reminds me of kind of my pleasant childhood and being with my dad and getting into cars, and I still believe I can feel the road in it at least a little bit. And I took the car passion or hobby, I guess, to at least a couple levels beyond my father, and it's people ask me what hobbies I have. I'm like, I always tell them I don't have very many hobbies, and pretty much I like cars and I like listening to music, and that's pretty much all I know about other than work stuff. And I love my work stuff too. I'm an ophthalmologist, a retina specialist, and I practice in St. Petersburg, Florida, on the west coast of Florida, and I love the work. But as far as hobbies go, I spend a lot of my time around cars and doing car events. I don't really have a car collection. I have a car variety pack, all kinds of stuff. Other than the SL, I'd say my comfort food is air-cooled Porsches. I find them to be very uh, easy to be around. My dad had a couple growing up, and I don't have any of the ones I had growing up. But I've got a variety from 1972 to 1997, and I just find them very soothing as cars go. Italian cars, which we'll talk about in judging, have always been my aspirational car. I've always aspired to be around and to own Italian cars. Even though I do have Italian cars, I still look at them as aspirational. And I feel like Italian cars express a lot of passion and a lot of imperfection and a lot of emotion, and have an exotic flair to them. This Latin passion, this passione that really still excites me when I see anything from a Beta Monte Carlo to a 250 short wheelbase. I get a similar emotion of aspirational, exotic Italian car when I see them. And that's where I am with cars. A lot of German stuff, some American stuff, aspire to Italian stuff. I'm a little bit all over the place with that kind of thing.
You're kind of like me because I was always, Mustangs because I just fell in
Mhm.
love with a 65 Mustang when I was like 13 years old. And Ferraris have always been aspirational, and I look at, the 275 GTB
Mhm.
as, a Mustang that went to college and studied in Europe and went abroad, because it's long deck, short wheelbase, big engine up front, two-seater with the back seat that nobody can really, well, that doesn't have a back seat, but, nothing in the back
Yeah.
that anybody could really do. So, anyways, I just love 275s. That's the one I really have always kind of loved and pursued, just enjoying them. So, what Italian, let's say Ferrari, is your aspirational
Mhm.
Ferrari?
Yeah, so there I kind of split it into two eras for simplicity. The 12-year-old in me loves Testarossas and F40s. The Testarossa when I was 12, the modern Testarossa from 1984, the original configuration to 1991 was all the car for me when I was 12. There were great marketers in Florida where I grew up. There was Miami Vice on TV. Testarossa was the world, the posters, the models, all of that. Subsequently followed by the F40. So Testarossas followed by F40s were the aspirational Ferraris for me when I was a kid. As I got into the history of Ferrari, my aspirational cars and the Ferraris that I loved evolved. I think they do for a lot of folks. And I'd say my aspirational Ferrari from the early era is probably an even numbered competition car, probably a four-cylinder even numbered competition car, just because everyone dives deep into the 12-cylinder even numbered competition cars. And I think there's something scrappy about the big bore four-cylinder cars. I like the Lampredi history to the engine design. I like that the four-cylinder was used in Grand Prix racing and in GT, sort of over-the-road racing, similar to the 12, but almost like the four-cylinder was the 12 cylinders scrappy brother. I wouldn't even say little brother because the displacements were awfully close for a long time. But I like the thought process that went into the even numbered four-cylinder cars. And I like how a Series 1 500 Mondial has a very similar body to a 375 uh, with the rivets and the curves. And I like the similarities between the two cars, but the attitude of the four-cylinder car, even though, and I have to admit, I don't have much wheel time behind either of those types of cars. And I understand their limitations to the drivability of the four-cylinder cars, but I don't think anyone's driving lots of these even numbered cars to the um, to the convenience store or to a school drop-off line very frequently. So I think if you're going to use it for events and vintage racing, I think I would aspire to a four-cylinder even numbered competition car for the history involved with the four-cylinder cars and the incredible successes that they had. They were great cars and a little different, a little funkier than the V12s.
Yeah, it's funny because people ask what's my dream car. I'm like, well, I have a dream car, but I've never driven it, and sometimes as soon as you drive it, it's the worst car in the world. So I've always said I've always loved the Cal Spiders 59,
Mhm.
60, and they say, well, you can't move the seat, they're really, it just isn't as enjoyable as you might think. Now, I did have a chance to drive the 250 GTO, and
Mhm.
that obviously is on the bucket list of all time. And that one's like a forbidden fruit now because as soon as I got out of the car, the son of the owner said I shifted too soon. Well, I was shifting at like 4,700 RPMs, 4,900, and he was saying, you need to be in the mid fives, but he didn't tell me that ahead of time. It's not my
Right.
car. And so that's like, if only I had another chance. So I'll probably have that on the list unless I ever get a chance to drive one again. So,
Well, the nice thing about the 250 series cars, and I do love 250 series cars, I love them because there are a whole bunch of flavors of them. And even though, obviously a 250 GTO, which I've never driven, is going to drive very differently than my Series 2 250 PF Coupe, which I've had since 2008, they have a common thread in that engine. And you can hear the commonality in the engines, even when they're um, race prepped. You can hear that kind of that ripping velvet sound of the 250. And
yeah.
they went from everything from four-seaters to alloy competition cars, and that engine was in production in its same basic configuration for a generation, as the displacement increased. But I think the best expression of that Colombo 12-cylinder engine is the 250, and I like the romanticism of the 250 series and how that had so many different varieties and so many different personalities with kind of a unifying thread. So even if, our listeners aren't shopping for short wheelbases or Tour de France's or GTOs, perhaps they can shop for a GTE or at least drive a GTE and get some portion of that experience, which I think is inseparable from the rest of the 250 line.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I know you have a hard out, so let's get going here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your judging history and just as important, like what advice would you give? Let's talk to like the 14-year-old kid who
Yeah.
is car crazy and like, how do I get into this whole car world? What would you recommend? So give us your overview.
Yeah. So sure. So judging cars and going to car shows goes all the way back to my childhood, especially with Ferraris. My father, who entertained my infatuation with Italian cars, even though we weren't Ferrari owners or customers, he did take me to very early versions of Cavallino in Florida, and Florida always had a strong Ferrari presence for an East Coast market, and I would go as a teenager and see the Ferraris, the classic Ferraris being judged, the modern Ferraris at the time, and then 1980s, early 90s Ferraris being displayed or what have you. And I thought it was a pretty cool thing to be part of. I've always been a learner and a reader and a studier, and I liked learning and reading and studying. And when I finished my training and I started spending an inordinate amount of my income on cars and car related activities. I bought a injected boxer in cooperation with my father, and I started showing it. And I was 31 or 32 years old, and this was 2000 seven, eight, nine, and I started showing the boxer at the Ferrari Club of America annual event in Cavallino. And I think part of getting into car shows, if you're a young kid, is going to whatever you can in your area. And once you have the ability to trying to go to certain larger national events and just being around, with or without a car, be around and express your interest and kind of listen and learn. And I was pretty good at listening and learning. I was a trained listener and learner, and I listened to the judges judging my car, and I communicated with them. People who are judges, I think, like to communicate with folks who are entering cars or interested in judging. So expressing your interest listening and learning is a good first step, I think. And if you seem like a reasonable person and you like listening and learning and you express an interest in judging, I remember that Chris Current was kind enough to give me the opportunity to act as a shadow judge, that's what we call the judges now who are learning, I think in 2010 or 2009 at the Ferrari Club of America or Cavallino. And, if you conduct yourself well and you do your homework and you research your class, the folks who are mentoring you will notice that, especially if you're a younger enthusiast. If you're the 14-year-old enthusiast or the 24-year-old enthusiast and you're car crazy, you know, be like a good student, be a good kid, be interested, ask good questions, study the cars that you're interested in, and talk to the judges who are middle-aged, or in our hobby, there are a lot of older folks doing judging. Express your interest and they will want to teach you and want you to be involved. You're not going to become the chief class judge of the FCA at 24, but you can certainly be a shadow judge and learn about the process if you're interested in it. I think there is an element of um, the car uh, career that is intertwined with judging now, probably more than it used to be. But I really like seeing young judges who are not in the car career express their interest as well because they don't have any skin in the game other than their passion. And I think that's something that may even give them more opportunity because I think that everyone knows that they're just donating their time because they like being around. So if you're a car crazy kid and you're a teenager or in your 20s and you're not in the car business, you don't have to be in the car business to be a judge. You just have to have the interest and the passion and the I guess what they call now in 2025 the emotional intelligence to interact with older car enthusiasts and judges in a reasonable way. And I think that you could do a lot in the hobby.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I kind of started the same way. Like I said, I was Mustang crazy, and someone once told me some of the best advice I ever received was when you want to buy that special car, how do you know what's right? Well, if you
Mhm.
become a judge, you learn what's wrong, you learn what's
Mhm.
right, which helps your education when you eventually want to buy something like that. And so I joined the Ferrari club when I was like 16 and I didn't have I'm sorry, Mustang club. I didn't have a Mustang till I was, in my mid 20s. So I was in the club 8 years before I had a car,
Mhm.
right? And then I became a judge, which I find like NCRS, the Corvette, and the Mustang
Mhm.
Clover, those are good ones to start out with, in my
Mhm.
mind, because you do learn where the nuts and bolts are. You go underneath the undercarriage and you're
Mhm.
looking at brake lines and stuff. Now, at like the FCA event, we don't go underneath cars,
Right.
right? And so I almost feel like doing something like that, where it is the nuts and bolts, that really helps you at a deeper level. So then when you go to like a Concord Elegance where it's a
Mhm.
little bit different, than say an FCA event. I just think it helps you, right? And then
Yeah.
same thing. I loved Ferrari, so I wanted to take that judging experience and move into the Ferrari world. And Chris Current, yep, he gave me a shot as under instruction or whatever they call it,
Mhm.
shadowing. And then he said, "Well, judge at a couple regional Ferrari events, and we'll let you have a shot at Cavallino," which I've been doing now for 3 or 4 years. So it's been absolutely fantastic. Sounds like we had a similar path
Similar,
somewhat.
yeah, similar patterns, similar mentors. And I totally agree with you. I think the best and most organized judging in the business is not Ferrari judging. It's probably more like NCRS judging or Bloomington Gold judging for Corvettes. I'm not familiar with Mustang judging, but it sounds similar. These teams have a whole development process for their judges, and then they have hours that they spend on each car, and each team really dives deeply into the car. And that's probably a great way to learn. Plus, the organizations are just much larger. There are a lot more Corvette owners out there than there are Ferrari owners. So they're just very large organizations that support the preservation and restoration and have a lot of knowledge about the authenticity and originality of those types of higher production. Awesome cars. I mean, one of my favorite cars of all time is a mid-year Corvette, or what used to be called a mid-year Corvette. Now it's a C2, but
Yeah, it's my
um,
favorite.
I,
Yeah.
I, I mean, oh man, I mean, if that one of the most beautiful post-war styling cars of them all is the mid-year Corvette Coupe, I think. And a lot of organizations, if you're a young father and have a young son, my son is 8 and he loves doing car stuff. It seems like he got the car gene. I hope it sticks, but he does love all things automotive. A lot of organizations like the Porsche Club and Haggerty at the Haggerty events will have junior judging. And of course, it's tailored to the age of the kids doing it. And my son did this at the Works reunion at Amelia last year, the year before, and this year we're going back. He wants to do it at Works and he wants to do it at Amelia. I don't know if this is something that RM is starting at their events too, like Moda and um,
Not yet, but we'll see.
but I think this is a path for
Yeah,
really young kids to at least get a little bit of experience, because at the end of the day, for those of us who aren't in the business, it is a hobby, and it should be something that you can do starting at a very young age or do with your family when they're at a very young age. And I really like those types of programs, even if they're not as intense as what the development program is for a Mustang judge or a
right.
Ferrari and CRS judge.
Yeah, and I know you have to go, but do you have 2 seconds to tell us how you got into judging at Pebble Beach?
Yeah, certainly. So I'm privileged to have served a couple of times now on the Pebble Beach Ferrari judging team, and I think the way that I did that is really by committing time to the hobby. I have served on what's called the IAC PFA, or the International Advisory Council for the Preservation of the Ferrari Automobile, for several years now. I serve as the chair of that group, which is more of an administrative position. I don't think I have the depth of knowledge of the historians or the restorers that serve on the IAC PFA, but I'm a decent administrator. And I devoted time to judging at Cavallino in the FCA after, going through the mentorship process that you and I both experienced with Chris Current. I try to be a fair and impartial judge on the field. And when I'm a chief class judge, I think I demonstrated to Chris that I'm a fair and impartial leader of the team with professional communication between myself and the entrants and myself and the judges on the team. And Chris, as chief judge of Ferrari at Pebble Beach, gets to pick who he wants on those teams. And I've been very fortunate to have served on the Pebble Beach team a couple of times. And frankly, I learn a lot through the process, and I continue to learn a lot through the process. And I love what I've learned and experienced through the process. And I think earning the privilege of judging at Pebble Beach is not very different than earning the privilege of judging at the FCA or at Cavallino. Is just continuing to do a good job, and not I never expect to go back to Pebble Beach. If I get the invitation, it's a privilege every time, and if I never get the invitation again, it's been a privilege. And uh, that's pretty much how I look at it. I've had the opportunity to exhibit at Pebble Beach twice, and I hope to go back at least a handful more times in my life. And it's the best automotive week in the world. And I think Pebble Beach is probably the highest quality car show in America, if not one of the best in the world. And it's electrifying to be around it as a judge, as an entrant, as a spectator. And I hope I can enjoy it for many more years.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have to give a quick shout out to Leslie Blinn because she's also been great in supporting me in my development as a judge. And basically, I tell her, just tell me what you need me to do. I'll do it. I don't care. I'm not going to say I have to do Enzo era. I'm not going to say, just tell me where you need me and I'll do it. So, well, thank you for being on the Collector Car podcast. What's your next judging event?
Well, my next event, it's not going to be judging. I'm heading up to Luftgekühlt with my son next week. First East Coast Luftgekühlt in Durham, with the Ingrams having a big role in this, I think. And we're bringing a cool air-cooled Porsche. Going to be lots of people taking pictures. The hallmark of Luftgekühlt is there's no judging, which is different than all the stuff we've been talking about with judging. I think the next event that I'm going to be judging at is most likely Cavallino 2027. That comes up in about 3.5 months. It's kind of a intermission in the car hobby, starting around Thanksgiving through the new year, so we don't have a whole lot happening. How about you, Greg? Where are you doing your next judging event?
So this is going to come out a few weeks later, but I'm going to Aldrain. I would
Oh,
go to
good.
Look to Cult, but
Correct. It
same
conflicts
way, same weekend.
directly. Yep, it
Fortunately,
conflicts
I'm going to go to
directly.
I think it's called Lake Mirror Classic down in Florida. None of this is judging. Hilton Head, I'm going to go to that concours as well. So,
Mhm.
yeah, so I'll be popping around quite a bit. I won't be judging again, I don't believe, until hopefully Cavallino along with you. So,
Yep. Well,
but we have
good.
a lot of other stuff to talk about when I see you again because I actually went to college on a partial French horn scholarship. So we can talk music next
Ah,
time we hang out.
that is super cool. I was not good enough to go on a jazz quartet jazz scholarship, but I did play in a in jazz band in high school and college, which was a lot of fun. We can talk about that for sure.
All right, David. Thanks so much for being on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate you having me. Take care.